NNF After Dark is brought to you by Sandpiper Vacations. For all of your vacation planning needs, visit www.sandpipervacations.com. Tell them that the No New Friends podcast sent you. Welcome to NNF After Dark. Chris is going to take you through the highlights of the previous episode and maybe even say some bad words, plus celebrity interviews and much, much more. And now, here he is, the scumbag reselling hoarder himself, Chris Yob.
Welcome to this week's episode of No New Friends After Dark. I said this week's episode because I lost track of what episode we're on. Scott, don't answer. Okay, all right, whatever. Scott forgot I was the host, I guess. Sorry. Whatever. So anyway, welcome to this week's episode of apparently episode 6 of No New Friends After Dark. Now, just a reminder, this is not our main show. This is a supplemental episode to the show we just recorded about an hour ago. If you want to keep up with all of what's going on with the No New Friends podcast, you can head over to Patreon. Go to the nonewfriendspodcast.com. nonewfriendspodcast.com. Click join our clubhouse. You can join a Patreon for as little as $2 a month. You can watch our full shows live because you will be in the whole loop. We record No New Friends After Dark live every week after the main show. If you're a Patreon member, you get to watch the whole show live. If you're not, you get to watch one segment. So if you come back for After Dark, you might not know what's going on. But if you're a Patreon, you'll get the full gist. You'll be able to watch the full show live, then all of After Dark live, which we stream on Twitch every week. Highly recommend it. $2 a month. Just pull a Scott, steal your significant other's credit card, and just charge it on there. It's $2, man. Just work the bridges if you don't have $2 a month. Just go with the cardboard sign. Get $2, probably take you 10 minutes. Anyway, this week, we had a lot going on. Next segment, after you hear us talking, we have the interview with Jeremy Miller, which is really, really awesome. It's part 2 of the interview. You heard part 1 in our regular episode. Part 2 airs right after we get done talking. And who are we, might you ask? Well, I am Chris, the host, who was just introduced 45 seconds ago. We have Scott and we have Nick from Sandpiper Vacations. Guys, I do want you to answer at the same time. How are both of you doing tonight?
Amazing. Oh.
Perfect. Perfect. I love when hosts ask other people how they're doing tonight, like it's going to be bad. Like they're going to say, like they're going to tell them about their day. We don't care. No one cares. It's really just to acknowledge that you're here.
That's not true.
Really?
That's not true.
Really?
For the longest time, I would, on Remy's Roundtable, he would ask me, so how was your weekend? I'm like, fucking awful. I had to work. Or fucking awful. I had to put my cat down or whatever. And he's like, oh, well, I had a great weekend, blah, 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 blah. It was every week. Every week he rubbed in how amazing his weekends are.
See, Nick, Scott is a professional host of a podcast. He's not a professional guest. He doesn't know how to respond correctly to when the host asks. When the host asks you how you're doing, you say great, or you say exactly, or hey, happy to be here, or you can do the not as good as you are. If I was any better, I'd be, and then X.
I'd be you, yes.
I'm still working on my dad jokes.
That would be my go-to. Now, before we get into what I want to talk about tonight, I met with my accountant today and got my taxes done, and I owe a lot of money. So, guys, I am happy to announce my pregnancy for this year. I am going to have a kid because I do need the tax deduction. I came home and I was like, hey, we got to have a kid and we got to buy a house, like, as soon as possible.
I need to pick up like 8 other jobs. It's not a good year for me either.
I might start fostering kids, Scott. So if you're interested in being my son, if anybody who's listening, please reach out to No New Friends Podcast at yahoo.com. And I will be taking applications. And just to let you know, my rate of acceptance for foster kids, 100%. So please just send me in. so I can write you off on my taxes. So anyway, congratulations to me for being a follower this year. Secondly, Sean's here. Sean is doing so Nick from Sandpiper Vacations is here tonight. His husband just came in, and what kind of shot are we doing? Whoa, he's feeding you now.
So let me show you.
All right, please go on. First of all, you just did a shot and didn't even make a face. You're a hardened criminal.
Professional. So we kind of learned this actually on our Virgin cruise. A new way to take tequila shots. So we just had a shot of tequila reposado.
Okay. What brand?
Cincoro. Michael Jordan's.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I had some leftover bottles from the liquor industry. But so you take oranges and put cinnamon on it. So instead of doing salt and lime, I've never done salt and lime anymore. I'm a man. I don't need salt and lime. So I'm a gay man, so I have to do an orange with cinnamon. Yeah,
Nick, I'm not gonna lie, that is the gayest thing I've ever heard. It is orange and cinnamon.
It's freaking delicious.
And I cannot wait to try it.
Yeah, we learned about it on our Virgin cruise, and now it's our new trend.
Wow, so orange cinnamon with Michael Jordan tequila. That's the most bougie thing I've ever heard. I will tell you, if I do try the orange and cinnamon after a tequila shot, I think my gay percentage will go up at least 2%. I think 2%.
I mean, it's already gone up. You got the hat going on.
I got the hat. I got the gay pride for people who aren't watching. Gay pride hat. Super gay. Super ally.
P for pride, right?
P for pride, not for Phillies. P is for pride. I love that. I wear a Phillies hat, and someone who doesn't watch sports, it means either pride or penis.
Right.
That's fine with me. That's fine with me because they're actually, if you follow the Phillies, I'd rather root for penis. So anyway, this week's episode. So we just got done recording our previous episode, and every week, at the end of the episode, I come up with an ad for Sandpiper Vacations, also the sponsor of this podcast, No New Friends After Dark. This week, I have had a lot going on. Last few weeks, I just been in this mental funk, and instead of explaining things to people, I just ignore people. I just ignore the calls. I ignore text messages. Scott thinks I hate him. Scott thinks we're not friends anymore. Scott texts me, "Hey, stranger." And Scott literally texted me the other day, "Hey, stranger, can you chat?" And when you're over the age of 40, you say chat instead of talk. It's just "Hey, can you chat?" That's just an old person thing. It's a midlife thing. Well, Scott's probably actually past his midlife. I'm sorry to say it.
Well, it's back when he had
Wow.
It's from when he had the CD from AOL. Public chat back in the day. He had to wait till the mail came and he got 60 free minutes.
That's what it is. So, I've just been in a little bit of a mental funk lately, and I kind of wanted to take this episode to kind of talk about that a little bit. I've always wanted to talk about mental health on the main episode. We joke about it a lot, but we never really get to dive into it.
Because I remember you, I don't know if you want me.
You had totally transparent about everything.
Yeah, you had a mental health episode, and we and as friends, honestly, we didn't really get into it a whole bunch. But I know that you wanted to talk about it, and we never could just really find time to talk about it or find the right place for it. Because even though I want to tackle serious issues, we've been on this run of just amazing and hilarious episodes that it just didn't go. But I know it's important to you, and we've wanted to talk about it. And I'm glad that we're finally kind of taking that pause to discuss it.
Well, you know what? This is what After Dark's all about. The stuff that doesn't make the show, the stuff we talk about behind the scenes. So this is some of the stuff we talk about behind the scenes. I told Scott, this was before I got married last November. And I told Scott, I had such bad anxiety. I own a transportation business, right? One of my drivers got into a really bad accident, and I think that kind of sent me into a spiral. And she got into the bad accident, kind of dealing with the fallout of that 3 weeks before my wedding, right? For anyone who hasn't gotten married before, imagine your biggest fear times 100. It's just you're on the grandest stage of them all on the altar, right? Everyone's watching you. Just the idea of that, the
grandest stage of it all. What, did you just win an NBA championship? You sound
Scott, my wife's listening to this.
Kevin Garnett.
My wife is listening to this. Sorry. Come on, man. The grandest stage of them all. Wow. So,
and to win this thing on the biggest stage, I'd like to thank God, my teammates, The owner.
Listen, there's no teammates in marriage, Scott. Not yet, anyway. That's at your point, maybe, but not mine yet.
Aren't you supposed to be partners and teammates?
I meant additional teammates. I meant additional. Yeah, that comes further. I think that comes to like year 15 or so. So anyway, when you try to rekindle that flame, you just bring other people in. So anyway, one of this the worst anxiety I've dealt with anxiety, a little bit of 30-second background, dealt with anxiety my whole life. When I was in elementary school, as early as elementary school, I remember going through anxiety. And now that I'm old enough to know what was going on, I recognize that it was seasonal depression, depression in general, just stuff like that. It's a chemical that's in your brain, man. It's like you can't help it. It's like if you were, you were born with a special need, like with anything. That's what a mental illness is. That's what anxiety is, depression, etc. You can't change it. Sometimes you need medicine, like myself. Sometimes people can help fix it with therapy, but it's just a chemical imbalance in your brain. There's nothing, there's nothing to be ashamed about or, embarrassed about. That's what it is. So I remember from all the way back then, never really knew what it was because it's not talked about a lot. Thank goodness in today's day and age, people do talk about it. There's even celebrities and athletes that speak out about it because we all listen to them, so thank goodness they talk about it, which is cool. Kind of brings light to it anyway. But so, that November went through a really, really, really bad bout of it. And to the point where I think I took off recording. I'm not sure for this show, but definitely Diz's.
You didn't miss any of our shows.
Probably because I was too afraid to, because you probably just added to my anxiety.
No, but I think
this is a good escape.
I think you kind of used it. Yeah, I think you used it as an escape. And that's what, in addition to trying to entertain people,
sure.
That's what I like for all of us. I mean, I had a really shitty week this week. And the one thing that is constant in my life is Wednesday nights getting together and recording our episode and entertaining people. And I look forward to this. But yeah, I don't think you missed anything. I know that you definitely weren't doing the usual extra stuff.
Right.
That you typically do. And you were very distant. And I didn't really know why.
From some of my closest friends, like for instance, my best man at my wedding, he noticed that I just wasn't, reaching out to him or talking to him or anything, and he knew something was up. And I'm very transparent about my anxiety. I feel like the more you talk about it, the more people can help you. The more that you understand that other people are going through the same thing as you, the more it helps you. But anyway, up until 2 years ago, or really just a year and a half ago, I tried natural things like natural medicines, like there's these things called 5-HTP, you can get GNC, L-theanine, which help a lot with people who don't deal with severe anxiety. I feel like on days where it wasn't real bad, that would help take the edge off and stuff like that. And but finally in October of a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago, it got to the point where I knew that I needed that extra help. And it's something that people told me, people close to me, like my wife, my then fiance, told me I should, definitely talk to a therapist. And I just kind of put that off, like, oh, nothing anyone ever tells me is going to change how I feel and stuff like that. I just, how's that going to help? I never went to a therapist but I did make an appointment with a psychiatrist, and that was the greatest, single greatest thing I could have ever done in my life. The psychiatrist treats through medicine. They put me on a medicine called Zoloft, and like I said earlier, having severe anxiety or depression is literally a chemical imbalance in your brain. If you have high blood pressure, they're not going to tell you, just go home and meditate. Just go home and think happy thoughts. They're going to put you on a blood pressure medicine. If you have cancer, they're not going to say, just wish you don't have cancer. Just don't think about it. They're going to put you on chemo, right? So if you literally have a chemical imbalance in your brain, you should be medicated for it to make that imbalance balanced again. So what was going on with me is there was not enough serotonin being produced in my brain. I get put on this medicine, and in 4 weeks, boom, I feel like a normal human being again. And what do I mean by normal human being? Well, I had no idea that I shouldn't be having panic attacks every other day. I thought that was normal. I thought that, me going to Walmart by myself was normal to worry about. What if I pass out in the middle of the store? Stupid stuff like that. And it's all just these, what they call intrusive thoughts, just seeping into my brain. And there's ways to fix that. But anyway, all that being said, I am medicated now. And go ahead, Scott. Go ahead before I go on with what's going on recently.
So yeah, you made an interesting analogy, and I was given an analogy, an allergy. Jesus,
allergy,
an analogy one time about like if your vision is not good, you go to an eye doctor. They say you need glasses. Same thing with mental health.
100%.
So here's my mental health story, and so I was with someone who had mental health concerns. Do you call them mental health issues? I
would just say mental illnesses. Yeah, mental health, mental illness. Yeah, I mean, I look at them as the same thing.
And I don't suffer from any mental illnesses. I mean, we joke about some of the stupid stuff that I do, and I have a little bit of anxiety here and there, but it's like what probably at baseline.
You get anxiety
levels,
when we don't have like the normal amount of listeners in a day.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, okay. That's a whole that's a whole new thing in its own that needs to be diagnosed. And this was something that was foreign to me. I thought depression was just I'm really sad or I've got low self-esteem, and I didn't understand exactly what that meant until kind of I went through it firsthand, because I knew people that suffered from depression, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, this person's gorgeous. Like, they've got this and they've got this, and I just don't. Why can't they just be happy? I didn't get it. And I mean, I get it now from a partner standpoint or supporter, but I still don't understand what it's like to go through that. I could be depressed, but I don't necessarily suffer from depression.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So it was really eye-opening. And at the time, of course I had to battle with work because I was missing work because I was trying to tend to my partner at the time who, had clinical depression and borderline bipolar. And that was like, they didn't understand. They didn't understand what mental health was and really what that meant. And it was really eye-opening for me how little we know about mental health at the time. And this is 20 some years ago, 15, 20 years ago. But, I don't really know the point that I'm getting with, but I feel for people who have the mental health illnesses and there's a lot of stigma of, they've got mental health issues. They're crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy is the word that gets used a lot. And that's not fair. You don't know what either trauma or chemical imbalance or situational, because there's, I believe, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I believe that there is situational depression.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Someone that's very close to me definitely had a bout with depression, but it was very situational, was on medication for a very short period of time and hasn't been medicated since.
Yeah.
But through the medication and therapy, was able to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, and it's like with the medication too. It's changed so much. Like, I suffer from anxiety, depression, PTSD, and I've been on medication since 2010. And back in I think it was 2021, I actually met with a psychiatrist to get my medications under control because everything's just changed so much over the years that I was not on the right medications that I needed. So it changes all the time, and it's like you said too, like, I've had a very crappy week this week as far as depression goes, but I have been in a really good place the past couple weeks, and it just came out of nowhere.
It's super easy, and from Scott's point, it's super easy to be ignorant to, and not ignorant in a negative way, ignorant to what anxiety or depression is. Like, just to not know what it is. If you don't go through
it's ignorant. Ignorance the best word.
And not in like a negative way, but just ignorance in the way that like you just don't understand. And it's easy to. It's easy to not understand, because if you don't have that, disability, I categorize it as a disability or a mental illness, because it's nothing you can change on your own. If you don't go through that, then you just don't know what it is. And that's totally fine. But props to you, Scott, for people who don't go through that, but still understand that you'll never understand type thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Nick, to your point, like you said, this last week was bad for you. This last week was bad for me too. And even when you're on medicine, hey, sometimes you just still, sometimes it doesn't make you a perfect person. It helps. It helps 100%. I would, I would advocate to anybody who is going through something like me or you to seek help. But hey, you still have your low points, and they're not as low. They're higher than the lowest points we've been through. I think you could agree with me on that. But yeah, hey, and you know what, Nick? Sometimes just no rhyme or reason. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes just in a funk and you don't know why.
Do you know what's interesting is all three of us have said that this was a rough week for us. It was a shitty week. And just the differences in how we handle that. For me, it was just kind of knowing my limitations. It was I had some obligations to fulfill, and I say obligations, but they were, it was working with Chuck on his podcast. I knew that like on a time frame, we had to knock something out on a certain day, and we had to do that. But then there was something else that we were going to get ahead on. I was like, can we push this to another day? I'm not in the right headspace. But other than that, like Chris is very withdrawn. Chris gets very withdrawn. And Nick, I don't know you well enough on a extremely personal level to know.
He never texts me anymore.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I'm kind of the similar way. I have text messages that I keep looking at, and I'm like, I don't want to look at them right now because I'll forget about it later when I'm ready to focus on it.
Yeah.
So,
and it's just interesting.
Yeah. And I think all three of us kind of go through it the same way, but it's how you bounce back or what. And again, I'm not an expert. It's just for me, it's okay. I go to bed and I can wake up in a completely different mindset, and I'm okay. But for someone who has, mental health illness or just different concerns, it just may be different. It's interesting to me because again, I think we all suffer from a little bit of mental illness.
We're all Americans,
and yeah. And the thing is I always tell people, everybody should spend some time on a couch.
Yeah.
Talking to a therapist. Like whether you have mental illness or not, you should, because it's a great opportunity to learn how you, just learn how you deal with things, learn why you are the way you are. I think it's a great,
and it's helped me learn to deal with others even too, by learning more about myself and how my anxiety works and stuff, and the reason why somebody might react on. You see all these videos on people freaking out on airplanes at flight attendants, and there's so much anxiety with traveling all the time too. Sponsored by Sandpiper Vacations.
We take the anxiety out of vacations.
Yeah. We take the anxiety out of planning.
That's true. If you suffer from mental illness and can't book your own vacation, give Sandpiper Vacations a call.
Let me freak out about it.
Yeah. Let Nick be anxious about it.
But it's like, it's giving me a better understanding. Like people react, and the reason they are reacting to it, it's not just because they're a bad person. Chemical imbalance is happening, and there's unfortunately what might work for one person of calming them down, it might not work for a different person. So.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I find super interesting, Chris, and I've thought about bringing this up on the main show, but I work with a lot of people that are younger than me, and what I'm finding more and more is the word anxiety.
Yeah.
And we haven't really gotten into this with Sarah, but 2 out of the 4 of us on the podcast are constantly talking about anxiety. But that's not like, you're not in the minority.
No.
And what I'm wondering is this a generational thing, or is it just something that we're hearing more about? And why is this affecting this age group? And I'm talking about, from Gen Z to millennial. So
I have a theory. I do have a theory on that. I do think that anxiety's existed for forever. I think that in the baby boomer generation, it was man up. I think it was toughen up, rub some dirt in it type generation. But I don't fault them for it. I think that was because the medicine and the science just wasn't there yet. My wife Emily did a report on what was called shell shock back from World War I. And what do you guys know what shell shock is? Back in World War I, when veterans would come back.
That's when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles touched an electrical wire.
Exactly. So she did a report on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and so soldiers from World War I would come back to America, and they'd be like fucked, right? Mentally, just like total, just like, because they've seen like the worst anyone's ever seen, right? And they're like, they just have shell shock, right? Well, decades go by, right? Now it's called PTSD. Right. Yeah. So people just didn't know how to deal with things then, and it's just part of that culture back then. World War I was going on, man. Literally the world was fighting with each other. You just have to like, strap up your boots and literally kill people. There was no time to talk about anxiety back then. You know what I mean? And as time goes on, they made World War II, which if you look at history, World War I and World War II was a big just cluster of just one big war essentially. And you just had to just go to war, kill people and fight. As time goes on, you start to realize, hey, you know what? Maybe these people do need some help, right? And finally, we've reached a time where we've realized that, you know what? Maybe these people aren't choosing to be shocked, to be shell shocked. Maybe they really have some things going on. Maybe we need to pay some attention. Maybe all these veterans, the percentage of suicides with veterans coming back from war, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's not because they want to. Maybe it's because they feel the need to because of what they've seen. I think we finally got to a time where, and I'll tell you what, social media is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing for most part, but there's some really great things that come from it. And I think a lot of these celebrities and athletes that talk about their anxiety and depression and any mental illness for that matter, kind of, it's. I think there's finally been an awakening in that mental health world that people were like, this is an actual problem.
There's a documentary, I think, with Demi Lovato going through her, or no, it's Selena Gomez, I think, talking about her mental health issues and how she deals with that, and being on the main stage, like as a presenter, she has to be on point, and then when you're done, you're checked out. So. And it's good to see it.
All the drug use by these musicians, all the alcohol and stuff. I think we're finally realizing that maybe it's not because that's the culture. Maybe it's partly, for sure, but maybe it's because of they're normal people just like us. Take away the money, take away the fame. What are they? They're just like me and you. But we do put them on higher pedestals. So I am glad that people like Selena Gomez, people like the lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, Lane Johnson, who's an inspiration to me because he's come out and talked about his mental illness, how he would literally throw up before every game from anxiety until he got help. Actually had to take some time away from the team last year because of mental illness, because of anxiety. It's just kind of like, wow, we put these people that we put on a pedestal are just like me and you, and it kind of helps. So anyone listening to this, I hope that helps you. I know I'm not on any pedestal like a Selena Gomez or anything, but I do hope that all this is normal.
You're a co-host on the No New Friends podcast. That's a pretty goddamn big pedestal. Okay?
We've got millions of followers listening right now.
Yeah, well, millions of... Yeah, okay. So, Chris, you brought up social media, and I know we're kind of running long on this segment, but so I had a conversation with someone that I work with who, younger, and anxiety came up, which kind of led me into this. And where the conversation started and what I didn't understand is I feel like the generation millennial, Gen Z are so much more, what am I trying to say? So much into diversity, inclusion, acceptance, that someone's appearance or someone's social awkwardness or whatever shouldn't be as much of an issue anymore because it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. The younger generation now is very, very accepting of if you want to dress differently, or if you want to love differently, or whatever. So
that's the one good thing they have going for them.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the millennials and the Gen Zers because they do a lot of good things, except for the goddamn plastic straw or paper straw.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
But that's a topic for another day. Yeah. they're so accepting, and to me, I was like, I just don't understand why this generation is having so many anxiety. I mean, so many people say I have anxiety. I just don't get it, and it goes back to social media. It's every time you post, you're waiting to see how many likes you get, how many follows you, and this is just, it's foreign to me. I mean, like, I want a lot of likes and follows just to boost our brand, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And this seems to be such a big thing. Is 100% social media and the likes and the follows and it's
acceptance. Yeah,
it's just.
It's we've got, this generation's gone away from racism and stuff like that, but now it's like social mediaism. It's like if you don't have this many followers, oh, you're not as cool and this and that. And yeah, and I'm sure that does aid to a lot of anxiety, Scott. But I think that aids to a lot of anxiety with people that maybe who are prone to anxiety, or maybe who never had anxiety but now have developed a new anxiety. For me, I was born this way. And I look at the condition that I'm in as somebody who was born with a different colored skin, with a different sexuality, with a different disability, anything. You're born, like, literally, you are born the way you're born, and that's it. And that's why I just want to get rid of this stigma, along with all those other stigmas that I just talked about, because it's just stupid. You're born the way you are, whether it's, like I said, you're born into a religion, you're born into a sexuality, you're born into a color of your skin. That's who you are. And I identify as having a mental illness because that's how I was born. You know what I mean? There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing to be afraid about. It's, if anything, you should talk more about it. And you should talk more about the way you were born. Because if you don't understand it, maybe someone else out there does and can help you with it and can help you be proud of the way you are and can help you help others. And I'm sorry. I'm not sorry about rambling on in this segment. I feel that this was really important. And yeah, it's not the funny episode that you're used to on No New Friends, but I'm really, really glad that we were able to talk about it. We have someone like me that was born this way. We have someone like Nick that was born the way he was, with dealing with depression, anxiety as well. And then Scott, who wasn't born that way, but understands it and understands that he'll never understand what me and Nick are going through. And I'm happy we had this conversation. I'm happy. I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Nick, and then I'll finish up.
I think it's a good topic, especially for me. Like, you don't see a lot of straight men talking about this topic in general.
Nick, can you elaborate on that? Because you texted me today. Nick reached out to me today and said, as a straight person, I'm proud to, that you talk about this. So that's one of the issues, I feel like, is what is it like? It's not masculine to talk about your feelings, right?
Yeah, it's like I said earlier. I just felt like we were all kind of trained younger to just kind of hide our feelings, and,
right?
You don't really see that much in the heterosexual male community.
Yeah.
As gay men, we've learned, and we've been through therapy probably a lot longer than most people for different reasons, but not just anxiety and all that. But yeah, it's just you don't see that from men very often. I was very close growing up with female friends because they had that open communication with me, and that's probably why, as gay men, we have dated a lot more women because we have that understanding.
Scott, take notes.
I got it. Yeah. I got it.
And you do hear that a lot of why gay men are so close to women. It's because we have that open communication and that vulnerability that you don't see in a lot of men.
That was really eye-opening when I got the text. It said, as a straight, being as a straight person, thank you for doing that. I'm like, wow, that's a shame that other straight people feel like they should be talking about their emotions and stuff. It's sad.
I haven't been straight since 1984 when I came out of the womb, but. So I can't speak for a straight man, but
Nick from Sandpiper Vacation, being gay since 1984.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put that on a T-shirt. Seriously,
gay since 1984.
And you know what? As funny as No New Friends After Dark can be, as fun as No New Friends After Dark can be, I love that we can talk about serious issues too. Tonight was a super important episode for me, I think.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to kind of wrap up this segment with quoting a good friend of mine, the host of Ashes to Awesome podcast, and he ends every single episode with the text phrase, "You are loved." And just remember that. Just as dark as things get, just remember, you are loved.
Couldn't have said it
I think that's super important.
any better, Scott. And listen, if any of you deal with any of the stuff that we've dealt with, need a friend, join the No New Friends podcast Patreon. Not because we want your money, because we have a great community here that we get it.
Just even reading the comments tonight in the chat, like, I'm loving all the support that we're getting and people opening up about themselves too. It's been awesome.
And you know what? We do a comedy podcast, and our listeners want comedy. And I think it's important every once in a while to do an episode like this, because it's important, and it's important for our listeners to see us vulnerable. And, you know, if anybody's suffering from mental health issues that maybe is quiet about it, maybe they haven't discovered that about themselves, maybe they're not seeking help, to hear someone that they listen to every single week who makes a lot of jokes and a lot of, you know, hear that, hey, they're going through maybe something that the same thing that they're going through. I think it's important. And, you know, if you didn't like this episode, I'm sorry. You know, stay tuned for part 2 of the Jeremy Miller episode.
I'll tell you what, Scott, I'm not sorry. I'm a little sorry.
I'm not either. I'm not either.
No, but like you said, before we do wrap this whole thing up, like you said, you know, we have a comedy podcast. We're funny in and out. Some of the weeks that you've heard me at my funniest, well, if you think I'm funny, but some of the weeks if you heard me at my funniest are some of the darkest weeks of my life. Comedy is an escape for me. You hear that cliche saying is, you know, the happiest people are the sad, or the funniest people are the saddest people. And you know what? Comedy is my escape. I thank each and every person listening, because you are my escape. Being able to make you laugh, being able to entertain you is my escape from all the bullshit going on. I had a bad week this week. I had a bad couple weeks, to be quite honest with you. But I look forward to every Wednesday night coming on here, telling some jokes, forgetting about what's going on in my average life, no matter how bad it is, to make somebody out there smile and laugh. If I can make one of you guys laugh, hey, then I'm happy. I can go to sleep with a smile on my face. Super happy to be able to have this conversation with the two of you. Super happy for anybody who is hearing this that may have thought that they are alone. You're not alone. There's millions of people like you. Get some help if you think you need the help. Do some research. The more you know, the better you'll feel. Man, I'm sorry this wasn't a funny episode, but I am happy that we were able to have this conversation, guys. I think we have I'll tell you what, as funny as No New Friends After Dark is, I feel like we had a lot of really good, important episodes here too.
Yeah, we have. We have.
I think it's the gayness coming out. Just making
it is. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
Making you guys feel comfortable.
We got all serious once Nick came
on. Nick is bringing out the best of us.
How this ties into our next segment. So next segment is part 2 of our interview with Jeremy Miller. And it's going to start off with how he had a mental breakdown at 10 years old. It is a super interesting story, and it's going to get a little bit darker, but then we bring it back up, and it's going to be a natural progression to the end of this show where we'll make you laugh at the end. So
yeah, I'll tell you what, this show might not be the funniest episode in the world, but this is all about pulling back the curtain. Damn it, I always mess that up. Hey, this episode is always about pulling back the curtain, and this is pulling back the curtain on my week, my life, our lives in general. Tune in for the interview in next segment. I ask my question to Jeremy Miller on who's the smelliest or best smelliest person he's ever been on the set with, and I'll tell you what, he answers it, so you're not going to want to miss what he has to say. That's coming up next on No New Friends After Dark with our interview part 2 with Jeremy Miller. There are 3 things that I hate in life: taxes, nausea, and booking vacations. The first 2 I'm stuck with, but for the third, I use Sandpiper Vacations. Sandpiper Vacations is a small business that is LGBTQ+ owned and operated with travel advisors all over the country. Whether it's a cruise, a trip to a theme park, or an all-inclusive resort, Sandpiper has you covered. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's free. Why book a vacation when you can have someone else do it for you? That's like choosing to take the stairs in a building that has an elevator. Leave the headaches of booking a vacation to someone else. Get your quote today at www.sandpipervacations.com and tell them that the No New Friends podcast sent you.
Hey everybody, it's Scott from the No New Friends podcast. If you'd like to hear all of our episodes, all of our past episodes, just visit our website, nonewfriendspodcast.com. All of our links to all of our old episodes are there. If you didn't understand an inside joke or just wanted to re-listen to something, just check it out. It's nonewfriendspodcast.com, or you can check us out on all streaming platforms. Welcome back to NNF After Dark. You're about to hear part 2 of our interview with Jeremy Miller. Now, if you heard the first part of this interview that was on our Sunday episode, you're going to hear one of the questions repeated. I just wanted to, that was kind of a good starting off point for this segment. So without further ado, here is part 2 of our interview with Jeremy Miller. I've heard you talk about your upbringing with your parents in other interviews, and kind of the comparison to some of the other maybe child actors who didn't respect their parents as much as you did. And kudos to your parents for keeping you grounded.
Well, they weren't going to have any of that. I mean, my mother was never, or at least never outwardly, afraid of losing the paycheck. Mm-hmm. That was not the most important thing to her, although it was important because I was basically the provider for the family.
That's great. At 8, 9, 10 years old, that's crazy.
And we can get into that in a sec, because I had a little nervous breakdown at 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
Because of all of that, and some other stuff too, abandonment issues with my father and those kind of things. But my mom was never afraid of losing that. If it meant, not doing her job as a parent, that wasn't going to happen. She kept me in line. Other kids, you could see their parents were afraid of losing that paycheck because they let their kid get away with anything. I never name names, but I saw multiple kid stars who are of my age and my generation telling their parent to F off, to basically, they were the ones calling the shots at 11 and 12 years old. That was not going to play in my house. Yeah, I mean, if I had done that, you'd have probably been digging my body up. So that was just not going to play. And I very much am thankful to my mom and my grandmother and my father for doing that and for being firm and strict with me and keeping me, as grounded and having as normal of a life as I could.
Okay, you said something about it. Your nervous breakdown at 10 years old.
Yeah, at 10 years old, I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. I've been an insomniac ever since.
Oh, wow.
I stopped sleeping. I was so stressed with the show, and I was dealing with a lot of the issues with my dad and mom divorcing. And like I said, my dad never abandoned us. I mean, we had the classic, 80s, divorce. Really, we saw him every other weekend. I mean, my dad went out of his way to be at my baseball games and, to come to my plays and do anything I was doing. He was there. He was not an absentee father, but I was dealing with what the doctors termed some of the abandonment issues from him having left when I was young. And knowing that I was the sole breadwinner of the family, that came up because the producers wanted me to cut my hair. The producers wanted me to cut my hair short. And for whatever reason, I was on this long hair kick. I wanted to have my hair longer. And it sounds trivial, but at 10 years old, when it's the only thing you can control in your entire life, because everything else in my life was, I was being told what to do, what to wear, how I had to look, how I had to behave, how I had to act. It was the only thing I felt I could control, and that was being taken away from me.
Right.
And it was kind of, that wasn't the trigger, but I decided I was going to make a stand. And we told my agent, no, I'm not cutting my hair. It doesn't matter. This is important to me. I'm not doing it. And the producers came back and basically said, well, if you don't cut your hair, you're fired and we're recasting you.
Holy crap.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So at 10 years old, the reality of my family is going to be in trouble if I lose this job came crashing down on me.
Wow.
And that was hard. So again, I stopped sleeping, developed this incredibly unnamed terror and fear of falling asleep. And it was hard. I had to do therapy. I had to do a lot of other stuff. I worked through a lot of it. But as I've said, I mean, I'm 47 now. This was when I was 10. I'm a 37-year insomniac. I deal with it still. It's more cyclical now. but I still deal with it still. I've gone as long as 7 days without having a wink of sleep. And believe me, I'm talking not a wink, not a nap, and you're out of your mind by that point. You actually are. You are certifiably insane by that point because your brain is no longer functioning, and it's not healthy. It's taken a toll on my body, but you learn to work through it. You learn to try and manage it as best as possible, as with any chronic condition. But it was something that it was a big deal. I mean, at 10 years old, I could not deal. And it took me a while to get through it. Thankfully, my producers were wonderful. My cast was wonderful. They were all there to support me, to try and make it as easy on me as possible.
Oh, wow. And you guys definitely had a lot going on that set. I mean, the last season, Tracy Gold was diagnosed with an eating disorder, left the show for a while. And that especially after you've explained your relationship with her, that had to have been really, really difficult on everybody, right?
It was extremely difficult to lose Tracy for a bit, except we all knew the seriousness. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Tracy was really good at hiding it. She always showed up in, baggy sweats. She always had, she did things like many people with eating disorders do to try and mask it. And being young, I didn't really realize. And most of us on set did not really realize what was going on. The only person who was clued in at that point was Joanna Kearns, who played our mom, because Tracy was confiding in her what she was struggling with. Mm. And one day we were in the wardrobe room changing. And Tracy and I were having a conversation about something, and we're just going back and forth. And I finished changing, and I walked out of the guy's side, and I'm sitting there talking with her. And Trace could be a little scatterbrained sometimes. I mean, she'd, get off on a subject. So we were talking, and all of a sudden she came out of the wardrobe room in just her bra and her pants. She had her sweatshirt still in her hand. Mm-hmm. And I almost fell over. She looked like a skeleton. Wow. I mean, it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. Mm. And I went to one of our producers, and they kind of made this start spiraling. And Tracy was 83 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
She was on the brink of death when we made this decision, and the producers forced her to leave the show. It was not something she chose to do or her family chose to do. Right. The producers forced her to go get help.
Wow.
And thank God they did. It saved her life. Yeah. I don't even know if she would have made it to the end of the season had something not been done. So it was hard to lose her for that period of time.
For sure.
But we all knew how important it was. We knew this was saving her life potentially. Right. So as hard as it was to go on without her, we knew it was necessary.
Yeah. Whew. I mean, I'm just imagine all these things that you all went through at such a young age. But there was a lot of fun things. You got to meet a lot of fun people. You got to work with Leonardo DiCaprio.
We had a laundry list of A-listers who came through our show who were not A-listers at the time. Right. I mean, 2 of Brad Pitt's first jobs were on Growing Pains.
Right.
Wow.
Tracy Gold's first kiss was Brad Pitt.
Yeah, exactly. She still gets to brag on that, We had Heather Graham, and I mean, the list goes on and on of these incredible actors and actresses who were young at the time, who went on to just do amazing things. And getting to work with Leo was awesome. He was very green and very raw when he got the part. If you watch probably the first 2 episodes that he was in, he's very awkward. It's not a great performance. It's very awkward. It's kind of off and shy. And I take no credit for his ability. I'm not saying, believe me, but me and one of my friends on the show, who was one of our script supervisors and script coaches, we started working with him at lunch and just running lines and trying to get him to loosen up, because he was such a funny, fun guy off camera.
Right.
Just in being himself, he was goofy and fun and just lively and had this personality. And we just kept telling him, you've got to bring that in front of the camera. as soon as you can loosen up and do that, you're going to be amazing. And soon after, in that next like third and fourth episode, you just see it. He comes into his own. And I mean, none of us, even Alan admitted, none of us were like, oh, he's going to be the next big star.
Right.
But you knew there was something there.
Yeah.
I mean, even at that young age, you were like, this kid's got something. This is amazing. So, you know,
cool.
Getting to work with such amazing, wonderful people was an incredible honor. I haven't seen Leo in a bit. The last time I ran into him was at Alan's funeral. But, you know, before that, we'd see each other every couple of years at an event, or even just run into each other at a restaurant or something. And he'd always, you know, give me a big hug and we'd talk and just catch up a little bit. But it was an honor to get to work with people that, you know, that were that talented, that amazing. I mean, heck, even older cast, we worked with Alan Hale Jr., the skipper.
He was
on our show. Annette Funicello, one of the original Mouseketeers.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, we just had a laundry list of incredible performers and actors and actresses who came through. And even as a kid, it was you knew this is not normal. Right. I am blessed to get to work with this many great people.
Oh, that's so cool. And now when I watch Titanic, I'm going to be like, I know the guy that made him.
I had nothing to do with it, but it was something you saw. And if you go back, he's very awkward. It's very stiff, his performance, those first couple of episodes. But man, when he started letting loose, it was just amazing to see.
That's so cool.
Well, next time you see him, you can tell him the No New Friends podcast says hello.
Yeah, I will.
And you can give him my direct email instead of Scott's. You know, that's fine. No.
So, Growing Pains ends after 7 seasons. Were the job offers flooding in, or what was that transition like?
I can't say that job offers were flooding in, but they certainly weren't disappearing. To give you an idea, while we were filming the final season of Growing Pains, I got an audition for Days of Our Lives.
Oh, wow.
And I actually booked a new starring role on Days of Our Lives. It was set to start as soon as Growing Pains went down. And like, I don't know, it was a week or so before we were supposed to go in and sign the contracts. I got a phone call saying they've changed the plot line. They're not introducing this character at all. It's done.
Ugh. Can happen just like that.
But it's something that's very common. Storylines change. They change day to day on soap operas.
Sure.
And it wasn't just that, we're going to go a different direction or we're not doing it yet. They literally just scrapped the character completely and decided they're not doing that storyline at all. So I had booked a regular role on Days of Our Lives and was going to be one of the new stars. And the opportunity disappeared. And I still was going out on auditions, got a couple of commercials. I did a TV movie. So the opportunities were still there. The door was still open. I wasn't having things thrown at me left and right, but the opportunities were definitely still there. I was the idiot who made the choice to leave the business so that I could go to college, which I'm not saying that's a dumb choice for everybody, but in particular for me, it was. At the time, the door was open. And I needed to take advantage of that as a professional, but I needed a break. I wanted to go be a normal guy for a while. And I had always dreamed of going to USC, and I got accepted and I wanted to go. And because I made the mistake of choosing the drama program, I had to sign a contract with the drama program that said I will not work or audition at all during my freshman year. That was a rule the USC drama program had. And I made the mistake of signing that and doing that. And by the time I got, first of all, and this is not against USC, it was not a good experience for me. A lot of things went wrong physically. I had some issues with a couple of with the dean of the school at the time, who seemed to think that I was there to try and take over rather than being there to learn. So she treated me very, very poorly. It was not a good situation. And by the time I decided to go back to acting, those doors had shut. People weren't as interested anymore. They'd already moved on to the next, young kid. So it was a mistake on my part, career-wise. Again, it's the way I live my life. I wouldn't change even the most horrible things that happened to me throughout my life because they all made me who I am today. As bad as a lot of it was, I wouldn't change any of it because I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the compassion I do. I wouldn't be able to touch the lives I've been able to touch or help the people I've been able to help if I hadn't been through those tragedies and those dark times. Wow. So, it's not something I would change, but it is something that career-wise I recognize was a mistake.
Oh, that's hard. That's heartbreaking. I feel that emotion. We were on this high with Growing Pains, and then when you say the door, I can feel it in my inner soul.
It was tough. It really was. It was tough to deal with, and you feel like a failure, and you feel like you have to process through all that stuff. And I dealt with some depression over it. It was kind of the combo of getting back into it as well as feeling like I had failed at USC, even though most of the circumstances were completely outside of my control. I felt like a failure, a real complete failure for the first time in my life. And it took me a while to deal with that and process it. I dealt with some depression, and, alcohol was already becoming a very prevalent companion in my life at that point. So, yeah, everybody deals with crap. I mean, that's just the truth. And that was mine.
But, and some things that we know about you just talking before we started recording, you've taken some of these life experiences and you've been able to give back, anti-bullying organizations, different things. Can you tell me about some of the things that you're doing now with your life experiences and how you're helping that?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things for me, and it's a mindset, but it's what I truly believe. I believe the reason we go through these struggles and experiences is so that we can turn that around into hope for somebody else, so that we can use that to, take like the sexual abuse or my alcoholism or whatever else. I can take what is a absolutely horrific experience that still to this day can creep up on me and cause me some issues, but I can turn that into something that can benefit and help someone else, deal with the same type of struggles and issues. So I still do a lot of work in the recovery community with alcoholics and drug addicts. It's a very, very big part of my story and a big part of my life. I was bullied relentlessly, in school at different times, and anti-bullying campaigns, and trying to help people understand that not only are the kids being bullied hurting, the bullies are broken and hurting. And, right. If we address that in some way, then, the bullying lessens.
Yeah.
It's not just that you need to help the kids who are being bullied, given that is a priority. But if you want this to stop, then you got to figure out what's at the heart of why those kids who are bullying are doing it in the first place. And it's not a topic that's talked about enough in the bullying community. Right. It's the focus is on the victim, as it should be. But if you really want it to stop,
get down to the root cause. Yeah.
You got to get down to the root cause with the perpetrators, with the bullies. So that's a big thing for me as well, is just trying to bring awareness to that and work with people who have a lot more knowledge on these subjects than I do. I'm very blessed to be involved with different groups who have experts, principals, psychologists, doctors in, the medical and mental health field. And I get to learn from their perspective what's the best way we can deal with this kind of stuff. I had 3 boys, and I'm very blessed and lucky that my boys didn't grow up with a lot of bullying. Mm-hmm. My oldest boy was, a handsome kid. He was a football player. He got along with everybody. He didn't get bullied. He was one of the popular kids, but he didn't have a tolerance, very much like I didn't when I was young, for people bullying others.
Right.
And he would get involved when he saw something and, put a stop to it. My middle son was the brain. My middle son, is a freaking 190 IQ, freaking Mensa genius. When my other boys would ask for help with their homework, I'd send them to my 12-year-old. He was the kid's brilliant. And all 3 of my boys were very smart, but my middle one and my youngest, they have that next level IQ kind of thing going on. But even then, they were fun and funny, and they got along with people and didn't deal with a lot of bullying. And, for my middle one, having a big brother who's on the football team helps, because
for sure
you're not going to screw with him if, you don't want to feel the wrath of the older brother.
Right.
So, it's not, we didn't deal with a lot of bullying issues with my boys. It's something I had more personal experience with, but I can't really speak to it as a father because I didn't see it much with my kids.
Right.
So getting to learn from other parents or administrators in the schools, what's really going on, that kind of stuff is really important. So I just look for any opportunity I can to try and touch somebody's life and to make a difference. And if it can be something small, it can be something huge, but as I said, it's one of the things that I loved most about doing the show. I mean, there were so many great experiences, but we got to touch so many people's lives. We had so many Wish kids come through our set. We went to orphanages. We went to youth homes and shelters, for kids who'd been abused, and just went and spent time with them and cheered them up. We went to hospitals. I worked on homeless programs, and at 14 years old, I got to speak to 81 heads of state at the UN.
Wow.
At 14 years old, I stood up in front of the UN and I spoke to 81 heads of state about child malnutrition across the world and how we were losing 30,000 kids a day at that point.
Wow.
From something as simple as not having a vitamin. And, those are amazing experiences. And I've always tried to carry that kind of work into my older life. Even though I don't have the same platform I once did, I look for every opportunity I can.
That's amazing. Chris, do you have any questions for Jeremy Miller?
Yeah, I have a couple later questions. So we talk about growing pains, obviously, a lot during the duration of this. But you also appeared on another show as a guest star. And this show had stars in the likes of Joan Rivers, Sarah Jessica Parker, B.B. King, Jerry Stiller. And of course, I'm talking about Shalom Sesame. What was it like being on set with the Sesame Street?
It was truly amazing being a part of Shalom Sesame. The funny thing is, the consequence of it is everybody thinks I'm Jewish. Every child who saw Shalom Sesame thinks I'm Jewish. I get messages all the time asking me why I don't, wear my yarmulke. I'm like, guys, there's nothing against it, but I'm not Jewish. I have no Judaism in my family or my history. It was just something I got to be a part of. The Sesame Street production company wanted to put together these tapes of Sesame Street around the world to help kids learn about different cultures and stuff. And I got chosen to be a part of the Israeli version. And it was really interesting because being an American kid, I only knew our characters. Well, guess what? They actually have certain different characters in the different countries that they do Sesame Street. So in Shalom Sesame, for instance, instead of Oscar the Grouch, it was Moshe Ufnik, and he was brown instead of green. Instead of Big Bird, we had Kippy Ben Kapode, the giant porcupine. It was Sesame Street, just a little different, but it was great because I got to go to Israel and go to all these historic, amazing places. We went to, the Dead Sea, and we went to the Wailing Wall and Masada and all these different places, the salt caves at Ben Gurion. And I got to be, I got to go to all those places and kind of be the guide for the show and to learn all the history. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I've been blessed to be a part of 3 incredibly iconic shows. I was a major part of Growing Pains. I got to host an entire, I think it was 4 or 5 tapes for this. It was 4 or 5 episodes of Sesame Street in Israel. And then on top of that, I got to play the voice of Linus in Peanuts.
That was my follow-up question, was how cool is it being part of the Peanuts? Like, that's some...
As a kid, I mean, it's still one of the things I'm absolutely most proud of, because that is a legendary and iconic legacy there, and to have been a part of it was amazing. And even as a kid, I knew how big that was. I mean, I got it. It was I was very, very proud of that as a kid, and we had a great time doing it. It was very different. You don't perform with the other actors.
Right. Yeah, it's just individual ratings, right?
You come in and you do your lines. And that was very weird for somebody who had come from doing theater and doing 4-camera sitcom and all this other stuff. Not having people to play off of was different, and you had to kind of learn how to do that properly. But it was amazing. I mean, I only did Happy New Year, Charlie Brown. I believe it was This Is America, Charlie Brown, and then the Snoopy musical movie, which was a 2-hour special or hour-and-a-half special on TV. And then also they had the talking Snoopy doll, kind of like Teddy Ruxpin. Right, and me and my Time Frame crew did all the cassette tapes for that as well, the story cassette tapes. So it was a great two years I got to do it. Maybe 2.5 years before my voice started to change. And as soon as that happened, it was like, sorry, time to move on.
Chris, you may have a career in like child voiceover stuff because yours hasn't changed yet. So
you said 3 iconic franchises, but in my extensive research on you via Wikipedia, you are also accredited to be the voice of additional voices in Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders. Is that accurate, or did someone put that?
Someone put that. That one is not accurate. I was not a part of Scooby-Doo, although I
couldn't find it anywhere else. Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to pretend you are. So you were in Scooby-Doo as well. One final question from me, and I ask this to everybody, on or off the record. Which actor or actress or anyone you've been on set with smelled either the worst or the best in memory?
Honestly, not something I really remember the detail.
That's what everybody says.
I mean, that's the honest. It's not something I noticed that much. I can say there was one guest star. I do not remember her name. I wouldn't even have a clue. But she unfortunately had the worst breath of anyone I ever worked with. And unfortunately, the scene we were doing, she got very close up to me, and it was very difficult for me to stay in character because I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but it smelled like she'd never brushed her teeth in her life. It was just, it was rough. But again, I wouldn't call her out even if I could remember her name, but I don't. It was just it was a random guest star during one of the seasons. But truthfully, other than that, I don't recall anybody coming on with really bad BO or anything like that, or anybody coming on and being really dapper. And I mean, even I'll give you an example. Alan bought a house that was right near our studio. So Alan would ride his bicycle to work every morning, and he'd come in his little track suit and take his helmet off, and his hair is still perfectly coiffed after taking the helmet off. And he's been sweating the whole time, yet he still smells like roses. And that was just Alan. That's just how he was.
There you go. That's a great answer.
we never expect names. We just like to hear how creative people get answering that question and
getting around it a little. Yeah,
exactly. So what are you doing now? I know you're working with the Bedford Film Fest. Tell me all about that.
Well, about a year and a half, 2 years before the pandemic, I got to get involved with this great organization called the Bedford Film Festival. And I got to go to this small town in Virginia called Bedford, Virginia, which I just absolutely fell in love with this place. You feel like you've just stepped out of a time warp, 60 years ago. Quaint town, great little architecture, wonderful, sweet, warm, welcoming people. It's just a great place. And then this organization, they wanted to give filmmakers who are in areas that do not have a chance to get noticed an outlet. That's really what it is. You have small filmmakers, independent filmmakers in different countries, in different states, who aren't in Florida, New York, or LA, which are really the only 3 places to get noticed. they don't have the same opportunities. So the film festival wanted to give their work a chance to be seen and to get noticed. And that's really what it started from. And it's just grown even more now into they're wanting to create more classes and actually have instruction and finances and all sorts of other things to be able to help these people get better at their craft, give them opportunities and resources to do more projects. And that's really what the Bedford Film Festival is all about. So I got to get involved. This year I'm going to be doing a cooking class. That's one of the things I do as a chef, is I'm going to be doing a large cooking class a couple of days before the film festival for everybody who's going to be out there. And we're just going to have a great time, but I'm going to be donating the proceeds from it to the Bedford Film Festival so that they can, start hiring some more teachers and instructors and stuff to be able to, like I said, give these people a great outlet. One of the best little shorts I saw when I was there during the first film festival was this girl who's dealt with an ailment all her life, and she produced this small little 15-minute short that was just absolutely amazing. Now, technically speaking, it was very rough and very raw, but this girl has talent as a filmmaker. And if it wasn't for the Bedford Film Festival, no one would have ever seen this work. Wow. So it's a great opportunity, and I'm really, really happy to be working with them and trying to help them move this organization forwards. So I'm doing that. I'm still acting where I get the opportunities. Still tied into 3 different horror films right now, which is because of the pandemic, finances have gotten interesting. 2 of them were fully financed before the pandemic, and then people had to pull money out to be able to save their businesses and basically survive during the pandemic, which was more than understandable. But now we're trying to recoup those, investors and finances to get the projects going. But I am involved in some projects. The book that I wrote with my very dear friend, Brandon Phillips, we're in works right now with a writer to turn that into a screenplay. Oh, wow. We're hoping to have the screenplay done by summer and start doing our pitches. We've had some initial interest from a handful of big name companies. I'm not dropping any names because I don't want to screw anything up. Right. But we've had some big companies, streaming as well as That's big awesome. Screen and TV, who've shown some interest. So working on that right now as well. We're about.
I do know a producer out of Ireland. Maybe I can make that connection for you.
Hey, we're actually working with with Bedford Film Festival. Right. I've met a lot of the great producers out there and directors and stuff. And 2 of my favorite people that I've gotten to work with in the last couple of years are also from Ireland and are going to be coming out to work on 2 of these horror films with me. So that's cool. Going to be awesome.
That's awesome. Where can our listeners find you? I know we've got the Navarro Miller Report podcast that's on Facebook Live and all streaming platforms. Where else can our listeners find you?
They can find me at Mr. Jeremy James Miller on Facebook, and I believe it's The Real Jeremy Miller on Instagram. And if it's not that, just reverse them.
So listen, what we learned today is that Jeremy made Leonardo DiCaprio the man he was today, and I am now going to take credit for casting Jeremy in Scooby Doo.
There you go. Perfect.
Jeremy Miller, thank you so much for taking time to spend time with us tonight. We definitely appreciate your transparency and candid. You're fascinating individual, and anytime you want to come back to promote the book, to promote any movie, whatever, you're more than welcome on here whenever.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. It was great being on. Thank you guys very much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Great having you.
Jeremy Miller, again, thank you so much. You're listening to the Native Friends podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, you want to join a cult? Well, this might be your lucky day. For just $2 a month and a simple blood oath, you can join our clubhouse and become a friend with benefits. In addition to the amazing feeling of donating to the poor, you will have access to Patreon exclusive content, live shows, and maybe even a behind-the-scenes look at my secret stash. To get started, head on over to nonewfriendspodcast.com and hit join our clubhouse. Can't wait to see you at the initiation ceremony. Oh, and in the chat during our live shows, of course.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed the Jeremy Miller interview as much as we did. Super, really, like, such a nice guy. Like, can't say enough nice things about him.
Such a nice guy. I got to tell you, when he popped up on the screen, when he entered the studio, I was immediately starstruck and like I didn't know what to do with my hands. Like, it was just so exciting to meet him. Such a nice guy.
And an important message, too.
Super open. Mm-hmm. He didn't hold anything back at all. And it was, I felt so bad when we were talking about Alan Thicke. And, his relationship with Alan Thicke, and just, it hit him hard. And I feel for the guy, but what an amazing guy, amazing interview.
Oh, really, really great guy. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I would have sexual intercourse with him. Just kidding. Cut that. We'll cut that.
Okay, so we have gone from culturally gay to
fully gay.
75% gay.
Listen, it was the second mug of wine. Oh man, before we wrap this up, I didn't talk about the whole anxiety thing on the regular podcast because I reached out to Scott. I was like, listen, this was last year. I was like, I'm the lowest point I've ever been in my life. But I found a way to overcome all this, and I'm in a really good spot now. Can I talk about it on the podcast? And Scott said, no, that'd be horrible for content. I
absolutely did not say that.
I'm totally kidding.
I absolutely said, yes, we can talk about it. And then I just never brought it up.
I'm totally kidding. But with that being said,
I believe there was like an episode and I was like, hey, do you want to talk about it this week? And you're like, nah, not this week. I don't think it really fits this week.
No, I'm feeling pretty good this week. Not depressed at all this week. Just save it for next week. With that being said, Scott does want to make fun of my mental illness. So he does have some Scott summaries for us. And listen, I'm all for it. Please, I hope that you did make fun of it. Without any further ado, here are Scott's summaries.
All right, listen, this was a tough one because how do you make fun of someone who's talking about their mental illness?
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott, like someone said in the chat, I said, I give you all permission to make fun of it because listen, this is the kind of stuff we have to laugh at because you only laugh at, you only can make jokes about things that you think are important enough.
Look at the dumpster fire that happened in 2020. Like, you have to laugh about things.
Have to.
Exactly.
You have to.
Exactly.
You have to.
I felt really bad about it, but with that being said, I still have a page and a half of Scott summaries.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
And they're handwritten too.
Very sentimental.
And they're handwritten again.
Very sentimental.
So, at the very beginning of the show, Chris forgot what episode it was. Clearly, Chris has also forgotten how to eat a balanced diet. Other things that Chris has forgotten.
Oh, no.
Working is not just something that his wife should do. Also, things that Chris has forgotten: selling the hordes of stuff he bought at the thrift store.
That's true.
One day I'm going to sell.
I'm really good
at
collecting it, just not good at selling it.
Chris also mentioned that he owes quite a bit in taxes. Chris is also wearing a red hat tonight. I know another person who wore a red hat and doesn't pay taxes. Make America great again.
We do wait, Scott. Before we go on, we do have a cliff note from Carl the Atheist about my mental illness, saying that I'd be depressed too if I lived in New Jersey.
They make comments about it. They were talking about how you make the logo for Ash is Awesome, and he's like, yeah, it's pretty good for someone from New Jersey.
I did see that. I did see it. And I appreciate
made a couple comments.
That was a really good one, Carl.
Yep. We're gonna get red hats. It's gonna say "Make America Gay Again." I like it.
Oh, I like that too.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, we're gonna make. All right,
those have already been out.
I'm gonna make that design tomorrow.
Well, it was an episode of Will and Grace too.
Really?
Because we can make NNF MAGA
Sandpiper
shirts.
We're gonna do NNF/Sandpiper collab. Make America Gay Again. Shirts.
Yeah, I like that one.
I like it too.
Chris seemed a little bit disinterested at the beginning of the episode before he got into, talking about his mental health and all that. He was disinterested until Nick started talking about food, and then he started growing like a pregnant lady. Speaking of pregnant, Chris said that for taxes, they need to have a kid. Chris, you could definitely pass for a pregnant woman right now. I did feel really bad for making fun of Chris during a mental health episode. I mean, that's like really shitty of me. But with that being said, Chris has a lot of ailments, and his latest ailment is agoraphobia. He's afraid to leave the apartment because people will see how much weight he's gained. That was from Ryan. I can't take credit. That was really good.
That was good.
Chris, oh God, I'm going to hell.
Oh, please.
Chris mentioned the Eagles player that, so much anxiety he would throw up before every game. Chris is clearly not throwing up before every podcast.
I did forget to mention that Mike Wagan has contributed to most of my depression. So thank you, Scott. These are all really helpful.
And finally, Chris said that the funniest people are typically the saddest. Chris is clearly the happiest fucking person I've ever met. And those are my summaries.
Bravo. Oh, that was good. That was really good.
There's a couple good ones.
Sean, wait. All right. So I do have to, before we sign off, that I do have to bring in the chat. Chat had a couple really good summaries as well. And listen, if you have a good summary, please write them in the chat while Scott is doing his subpar ones. So, Game Master Ryan says he could pass for all three men and the baby. And lastly, Nick's husband Sean writes in saying, "Chris, lucky for you, I'm a chubby chaser."
Oh, there you go.
So Nick won't be on again. He's pretty pissed at me.
Now he knows that you have food in your house.
That's what it is. That's probably why Rachel married Scott. Like, this guy's fucking great food, doesn't he? This guy's a great cook, and then she marries him and can't even bake a salmon that's prepackaged. Oh, well, anyway. If you're still listening, thank you. If you're not listening, hey, you're not even hearing this. So
makes sense.
Thank you so much. Hey, I'm just saying it as is. Thank you thank you everyone so much for who watched live on Twitch. I encourage you to listen to it again, so Scott won't call me depressed that our numbers aren't as good as last week for No New Friends After Dark. But seriously, I hope you enjoyed this episode. On a serious note, if you are going through anything, depression, anxiety, you're not alone. Seek help. Don't Google it. It'll say you have cancer. Trust me.
Testicular cancer.
Yeah.
Even if you're a woman, it's really weird.
Just make it even worse. Special shout out to Nick. Thank you so much for elaborating on your a little bit of your mental health. Scott, fuck you. You'll never understand.
Yeah, I don't understand why you guys are so fucking crazy.
That's barely even. We barely even touched the tip of it. There's
but listen,
more.
I look forward to touching the tip, Nick, and we might touch the tip next week. Again, this is a supplemental episode to the No New Friends podcast. This is a bonus episode. If you did like it, thank you. If you didn't like it, I don't really care, because I did. So thank you all so much for listening. We will see you right back here again whenever you listen. Can't even say next week. This is on demand. on behalf of Scott and Nick and everyone in our chat, we'll see you next week. I didn't mention my name, but that's all right, because my name's mentioned like 3 times at the beginning.
Doesn't matter. Your name is irrelevant.
Yeah. I feel like my voice is annoying enough to know that this is me.
It's no wonder you have depression. I beat the shit out of you every week. Oh, your name's insignificant. You're fat. You're a child.
I'll tell you what.
You're underdeveloped.
I have a really bad radio voice, but at least I'm noticeable. Like, I'm distinguishable. Like, oh, that guy sucks. That guy's voice sucks. It's definitely Chris. Like, it's definitely not Scott or Nick. That guy's voice is horrible.
And what's all that goddamn clicking?
Nick, do you hear my clicking?
I was hearing something. It thought it sounded like popcorn or...
Well, listen, I do like fidget, but I do... Apparently, I have a natural click. I have a natural, just like... Not only am I mentally disabled, but I also have a speech impediment, apparently, as well. So, yeah. It's a whole bag of chips.
No New Friends After Dark has been brought to you by Sandpiper Vacations. SandpiperVacations.com. Just check out our website, NoNewFriendsPodcast.com. Become a friend with benefits. Check out our sweet merch and so much more. This has been a No New Friends Entertainment LLC production.